I am Vox Thule, former Chief Archivist of the Galactic Council, keeper of 20,000 years of interstellar history. As I record these words, the Council no longer exists. The great chambers where species from 1,000 worlds once debated now drift as scattered debris through the cold vacuum of space. The archives I tended for 3 centuries are preserved only in my memory and in scattered data crystals smuggled away before the end. You will judge me. That is your right. I was complicit in a system that, for all its grand ideals, ultimately betrayed them. But before judgment comes understanding, and so I offer this account, not as justification, but as testament. The humans joined our alliance 30 cycles ago, a curious species, physically unimpressive by galactic standards, fragile calcium-based endoskeletons, limited sensory range, slow reflexes. The Dravkarian representatives openly questioned their admission, suggesting they would contribute little to the grand tapestry of our civilization. How terribly wrong they were. What humans lacked in physical prowess, they compensated for with innovation. Their faster-than-light drive designs revolutionized interstellar travel within a decade, while our established guild of dimensional engineers had spent millennia making incremental improvements to the quantum tunneling network. Humans proposed radical new approaches. They called it precursor gate technology, though in truth, they had developed it independently. The Council welcomed human innovation, but kept them at arm's length from true power. No humans sat on the High Council or commanded our defense fleets. Their diplomatic corps was respected but carefully monitored. Looking back, I wonder if we feared them from the beginning, these strange, short-lived beings with their constant questions and restless creativity. Our society, for all its multi-species diversity, operated on strict hierarchies and conservative vision. Change came slowly, deliberately, over centuries. Humans moved at a different pace, even accounting for translation errors. They used words like tomorrow and next year when discussing major technological or social shifts. It unsettled many council elders. I recorded it all in the Great Archive. The debates about human integration, the trade agreements, the cultural exchange programs, the security reports. Such was my duty. Neutrality was my creed, to observe, document, and preserve without judgment. Yet I was not neutral. None of us truly were. We viewed humans through the lens of 20,000 years of galactic civilization, as newcomers to be educated, guided, and sometimes restrained. That perspective cost us everything. The first tremors of collapse began at a remote outpost called Terra, a joint research station orbiting a red dwarf star in the Cygnus Arm. The station housed various species, including a small human contingent. Among them was Era Cooper, a 16-year-old human female, daughter of 2 xenobiologists. Ara was not a diplomat or soldier or scientist, merely a child by human standards. Yet she possessed the intense curiosity typical of her species. While her parents cataloged microbial life forms from nearby moons, Ara explored the station's systems, displaying an intuitive grasp of technology that would have earned her immediate recruitment into the Guild of Dimensional Engineers had she been born to any council species. It was Ara who discovered the hidden precursor gate signal. The Council had authorized limited research into precursor technology at Terra, but concealed the true scope of the facility from human observation. Ara, playing with what she thought was a standard communications array, detected an unusual quantum frequency pattern. Rather than dismissing it as background noise, as many trained technicians had, she recognized it as an intentional signal, a control mechanism for what appeared to be a vast network of inactive precursor gates spread throughout the galaxy. Gates that would bypass the Council's carefully controlled transportation monopoly. Gates that would render our most valuable technological advantage obsolete overnight. I remember the emergency session when news of her discovery reached the Council. I stood in my customary place behind the High Counselor's podium, recording devices active, as Commander Vex of Internal Security delivered his report. The human juvenile has accessed restricted quantum frequency bands, Vex stated, his forearms gesturing in the formal pattern, indicating grave concern. She has already documented her findings and appears to understand their significance. High Counselor Zivak's chromatophores darkened with alarm. Has she transmitted this information? Not yet, but her personal computing device contains detailed notes. It is only a matter of time. Security Chief Draknar, a massive Vrulheen whose species had helped found the Council millennia ago, rumbled through his breathing apparatus. The implications are clear. If humans gain access to the precursor network, they would have unrestricted movement throughout Council space, completed Zivak. Our strategic advantage would be neutralized. The parents, asked a Pellerin representative. Unaware of their offspring's activities, replied Vex. They are currently on an expedition to the fourth moon. I should have spoken then. In 20,000 years of Council history, we had faced greater threats than a human child's discovery. We had negotiated, compromised, found peaceful solutions, but fear drove the discussion toward its inevitable conclusion. The situation must be contained, declared Zivak, after minimal deliberation. Security Chief Draknar, implement Protocol Silence. Protocol Silence. 3 syllables that authorize the elimination of security threats. In all my centuries of service, I had documented its invocation only 7 times, always against armed insurrectionists or proven spies, never against a child. I remained silent, telling myself I was merely the recorder, not a participant. Neutrality was my shield and my shame. The Council's enforcers moved quickly. Within 6 hours, a tragic accident occurred at Terranova Station. A power coupling in the residential section suffered a catastrophic failure, causing an explosion that claimed 3 lives. One of them was Era Cooper. The official report cited maintenance negligence. Compensation was offered to the grieving parents. Condolences were extended by Council representatives. The matter was considered closed. Except the humans had cameras everywhere. It was a cultural peculiarity we had noted, but never truly appreciated. Where Council species valued privacy and decorum, humans recorded everything. Their living quarters, their workspaces, their public areas, all monitored by what they called security systems. 3 days after Ara's death, footage from those cameras began spreading across the galactic communication network. It showed Council security forces entering the station through a maintenance airlock. It showed them overriding safety protocols on the power coupling. It showed them checking the station manifest to confirm Ara's location. It showed the deliberate execution of a 16-year-old girl for the crime of being too curious. The response from Earth was immediate and unlike anything in Council records. Human Ambassador Maya Ortega, previously known for her diplomatic finesse and cultural sensitivity, requested an emergency session of the full Council. When granted, she entered alone, without the customary aides or translators. I remember her small figure standing in the center of the great chamber, surrounded by representatives of species that had explored the stars when humans were still perfecting agriculture. I come before this Council not to negotiate, not to debate, but to deliver a message from the unified governments of Earth, she began, her voice steady, despite the emotion evident in her biological signs. For 30 years, we have participated in your alliance in good faith. We have shared our technologies, learned your customs, respected your authority. That relationship ends today. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Zivak raised a tentacle for silence. 3 days ago, your agents murdered Era Cooper, a 16-year-old girl whose only crime was intelligence. You killed her because she discovered something you wished to keep hidden. You killed her because you feared what humans might do with knowledge you consider your exclusive property. Ambassador, interrupted Zivak. These are serious accusations. We have thoroughly investigated the tragic accident at Terranova. We have the footage, Ortega said, activating a holographic display that showed the security forces entering the station. Every moment is documented. There was no accident. The chamber erupted in denials and demands. Zivak called for order as Draknar moved toward Ortega. I increased the sensitivity of my recording devices, determined that whatever happened next would be preserved accurately. Earth has voted unanimously on our response. Ortega continued, undeterred by the chaos around her. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Galactic Council. Laughter echoed from several delegations. Humans represented less than 0.1% of Council space. They maintained a modest defense fleet of perhaps 200 vessels. The Council commanded over 50,000 warships across 217 species. You cannot be serious, said Zivak, chromatophores displaying a pattern that translated roughly as condescending amusement. We are entirely serious, replied Ortega. Our terms are simple. A public acknowledgement of the murder, reparations to the Cooper family, and the unconditional surrender of the Galactic Council to human authority. The laughter grew louder. Even I, who had studied human history extensively, found the demands absurd. In 20,000 years, the Council had faced and defeated rebellions from species with far greater military capabilities than humans possessed. Ambassador Ortega, said Zivak, with what passed for patience among his kind. I understand that emotions are running high, but surely you recognize the impracticality of your position. You have 24 Earth hours to comply, Ortega responded, using the human time measurement deliberately. After that, we will take what you will not give. With those words, she turned and left the chamber. No formal departure, no diplomatic courtesies, just the retreating back of a small figure, representing a species that had seemingly lost its collective sanity. The Council did not even bother to vote on the human demands. The security breach was concerning, but the threat was dismissed as emotional hyperbole. A minor diplomatic incident, nothing more. Additional warships were dispatched to human-controlled systems as a precaution, but no one seriously believed Earth could pose a genuine threat. 23 hours later, every quantum communication node in Council space simultaneously failed. The precursor gates, our carefully controlled network of faster-than-light travel points, went offline. Defense grids across 1,000 worlds reported complete system failures. In the confusion that followed, we did not immediately recognize what had happened. Council technology relied on quantum entanglement principles for instantaneous communication across vast distances. It was considered unhackable, impervious to interference. But the humans had built backdoors into every piece of technology they had shared with us over 30 years. Subtle vulnerabilities, hidden access points that they activated simultaneously across the galaxy. In a single moment, they neutralized communications, transportation, and defense systems that had safeguarded Council civilization for millennia. And then their fleet appeared. Not the modest defense force we had monitored and permitted. Something else entirely. Thousands of warships materialized near critical Council installations. They had been building in secret, hiding their true capabilities, preparing for a contingency they hoped would never come but ready if it did. General Thomas Reeves led the assault on the Council's Central Observatory, where the High Council had convened an emergency session. I was present, frantically trying to establish communication with our outposts, when the human vessels emerged from what appeared to be localized precursor gates. Technology they had supposedly been struggling to understand. "This is General Thomas Reeves of the Earth Defense Force," came the transmission on all frequencies. "Your communications are disabled. Your defenses are offline. Your leadership is surrounded. In the name of Ara Cooper and humanity, we demand your immediate surrender." Zivak, to his credit, maintained his dignity. "General Reeves, surely we can discuss the situation reasonably. Whatever grievances Earth may have, You killed a child to protect your monopoly, Reeves interrupted. There is nothing to discuss. The attack that followed was precisely calculated. Human ships targeted only military installations and government structures. They disabled rather than destroyed civilian vessels. And they systematically eliminated the Council leadership with surgical strikes. I survived only because I was heading to the archives when the first bombardment hit the Council chamber. The blast threw me against a wall, knocking me unconscious. When I awoke, the Central Observatory was in ruins. 20,000 years of carefully accumulated power had been broken in minutes. The unconditional surrender of the Galactic Council was signed 3 days later on Luna, Earth's moon. Admiral Petra Vulov represented humanity at the ceremony. I was among the few surviving Council officials present, still in my role as archivist, recording the end of one era and the beginning of another. The Galactic Council is hereby dissolved, Vulov stated, her voice neither triumphant nor vengeful, simply matter of fact. In its place, we establish the Federation of Independent Systems, where all species shall have equal voice and equal access to technology. The Precursor Gate network was activated shortly thereafter. Thousands of dormant gates, some dating back to species long extinct, suddenly operational after eons of silence. The humans had not only discovered them, they had determined how to reactivate them en masse. With the gates open to all, the careful power balance the Council had maintained collapsed overnight. Species that had been relegated to the fringes of galactic society suddenly had access to resources and territories previously beyond their reach. Ancient rivalries reignited, new alliances formed, chaos. Yes, but creative chaos, dynamic chaos. In the wake of the Council's fall, I expected retribution. Instead, I received a visitor in my temporary quarters on Luna, Ambassador Ortega, now serving as Earth's representative to the newly formed Federation. You're the archivist, she said without preamble. The one who recorded everything. I acknowledged that I was. We need you to continue your work. The Federation requires an honest accounting of history, including our own actions. You would trust me with that responsibility, I asked. After what the Council did? We trust the evidence. We've reviewed your personal records. You documented the decision to kill Aura accurately, without attempting to justify it. That suggests integrity, even if you did nothing to prevent it. Her words cut deeper than any punishment could have. I had been present when a child's death was ordered, and I had done nothing. Neutrality was no defense. The Federation will not be perfect, Ortega continued. No government is. We will make mistakes. We may one day become what we overthrew. That's why we need someone to document the truth, especially when it's uncomfortable. I accepted the position. What choice did I have? My previous life was gone. My species diminished in the new order. But more than that, I recognized the opportunity for atonement, however partial. And so I have spent these last years compiling this account, not just of the Council's fall, but of its 20,000-year history, its achievements and failures, its wisdom and its hubris. The humans have not censored my work, even when it portrays them unfavorably. Their only demand is accuracy. The phrase, "don't kill children," has become something of a galactic maxim now, a simplistic but powerful distillation of the event that transformed interstellar civilization. It appears in diplomatic protocols, in military doctrines, in educational materials across 1,000 worlds. Not just human children, any children of any species. I often think of Era Cooper, the girl whose death triggered the Council's downfall. What might she have become had she lived? A scientist? An explorer? We will never know. But her discovery lives on in the open Precursor Gate network that has reshaped our society. And in the archives I now maintain, her story is told in full, not as propaganda for Earth or the Federation, but as a historical inflection point, a moment when one species faced a moral test and failed, while another transformed grief into revolution. I am Vox Thule, archivist of the Federation of Independent Systems, formerly of the Galactic Council. I record these words as testament. Judge me as you will. When Commander Vex entered the private chambers of High Counselor Zivak, he found the ancient Peliran in a state of contemplation, his chromatophores shifting through subtle patterns that reflected deep thought. The human child has been dealt with, Vex reported, his forearms performing the gesture of completion. The parents believe it was an accident. Zivak's skin rippled with acknowledgement. Any complications? None. Our operatives were thorough. The station's systems recorded a catastrophic power coupling failure. Standard protocol dictates that such incidents be investigated by local authorities, who will find evidence of neglected maintenance. And the child's research? Purged from all systems. Her personal devices were destroyed in the explosion. Zivak's primary optical cluster focused on Vex. You are certain nothing remains? These humans have a peculiar obsession with redundant data storage. We were thorough, Vex repeated, though a slight discoloration along his thoracic plates, unnoticeable to most species but clear to a Peliran, betrayed uncertainty. I dislike this necessity, Zivak said after a moment of silence. In 20,000 years, the Council has rarely resorted to such measures, particularly against non-combatants. The precursor gate technology cannot fall into human hands, Vex insisted. You've seen the security assessments. Their expansion rate already exceeds projections. With unrestricted access to the gate network, I am aware of the strategic implications, interrupted Zivak. Nevertheless, I find it troubling that we consider a juvenile female of their species such a threat that we must resort to protocol silence. It is precisely because she is a juvenile that she presents such danger, Vex countered. The humans place irrational value on their young. Had we eliminated a scientist or military officer, they would suspect deliberate action. A child lost in an accident invites sympathy rather than suspicion. Zivak's chromatophores darkened. You have spent too much time studying their weaknesses, Commander. Remember that understanding another species should not be solely for the purpose of exploitation. With respect, High Counselor, my duty is security. The Council has maintained galactic stability for millennia by controlling certain technologies. The precursor gates are perhaps the most critical. If the humans activated the dormant network? Yes. Zivak's skin flushed with irritation. The strategic models are clear. Unauthorized gate access would destabilize established trade routes, undermine our defensive positions, and potentially allow undesirable cultural exchange between previously isolated species. The models predict a 78.3% probability of major interstellar conflict within 50 cycles. Then we are agreed that the action was necessary. Zivak undulated in the Peliran equivalent of a sigh. Necessary is not the same as right, Commander. I have authorized many necessary actions in my 3 centuries on the Council. I wonder how many were truly right. Philosophy is the domain of the Contemplation Guild. High Counselor, security requires practicality. Indeed. Zivak's chromatophores shifted to the formal pattern, indicating an end to the conversation. Maintain surveillance on the human diplomatic corps. If there is any indication they suspect our involvement, we will know immediately, Vex assured him. The quantum monitoring network captures all their official communications. And unofficial? We have made significant progress penetrating their encryption, though they continue to develop new methods at an unsettling rate. Another reason to keep them at arm's length from critical technologies. Zivak noted, Continue your vigilance. Commander, dismissed. After Vex departed, Zivak remained in contemplation. In his long life, he had witnessed the rise and fall of governments on hundreds of worlds. Species that once seemed threatening had been gradually integrated into the Council's careful balance of power. Others that resisted integration had been subtly but firmly contained. Humans presented a unique challenge. They cooperated while constantly testing boundaries. They respected council authority while quietly building their own power base. They shared technology while clearly withholding their most advanced developments. And they bred so quickly. Most council species measured generations in centuries. Humans produced new offspring in less than 2 decades. Each generation slightly different from the last. The speed of their cultural and technological evolution was unprecedented. The precursor gates would accelerate that evolution exponentially. Unrestricted travel throughout the galaxy would expose humans to thousands of civilizations, each with technologies and ideas the Council had carefully filtered for millennia. No, Zivek decided, reaffirming his approval of Protocol Silence. The death of one human juvenile was regrettable, but necessary for galactic stability. In time, this minor incident would be forgotten, a footnote in the long history of Council governance. It was the last significant misjudgment of his long career. Why? Maya Ortega had not slept in 72 hours. Since receiving the footage from Terranova Station, she had been locked in continuous emergency sessions with Earth's unified government, military command, and intelligence services. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her normally immaculate diplomatic attire showed subtle signs of neglect. None of that mattered now as she stood before the Council, delivering humanity's response. Her voice remained steady, her posture unbent, as she formally declared war on the most powerful political entity in known space. The laughter that followed her ultimatum did not surprise her. She had expected it, counted on it, in fact. Let them underestimate humanity one final time. As she exited the Council chamber, ignoring the proper diplomatic protocols, General Thomas Reeves fell into step beside her, though present as her military attaché. He had remained outside during her address, as planned. "It's done," she said simply, as they entered the secure human embassy on the station. Reeves nodded, his weathered face grim. And their response? Exactly as predicted. Condescension, dismissal, and minimal concern. She collapsed into a chair once they were alone in her office, the facade of strength momentarily giving way to exhaustion. They're dispatching additional warships to human systems as a precaution, but they don't consider us a serious threat. Perfect. Reeves activated a secure communication device. Authorization, Sierra Tango 19. Countdown initiated. How long? Ortega asked. 23 hours. Long enough for their ships to commit to their new positions. Not long enough for them to conduct any meaningful intelligence gathering. He studied her with concern. You should rest. Maya. You've done your part. She shook her head. Not until I've spoken with the Coopers. They deserve to hear directly from me what's coming. That conversation can wait a few hours. You're no good to anyone if you collapse. Tell that to Ara, Ortega replied sharply, then immediately regretted the tone. I'm sorry, Thomas. I keep seeing that footage. She was 16, my daughter's age. Reeves' expression softened slightly. We all feel it. That's why there was no debate in Parliament, no dissenting votes. Even the pacifist bloc recognized that this crosses a line no civilization can ignore. We're about to kill people, Thomas. Many people. Council soldiers and officials who had nothing to do with the decision. We're about to remove a system that decided a child's life was worth less than their political stability, he countered. Our targeting is precise. Civilian casualties will be minimal. There's always collateral damage. Yes. And we'll answer for every life lost. But if we allow the Council to murder our children with impunity, what kind of future are we securing? He checked his tactical display. The evacuation of non-essential personnel from Council space is 82% complete. Our people will be safe. Ortega nodded, then activated her communication terminal. Connect me to Daniel and Sarah Cooper on Earth. After a brief delay, two grief-stricken faces appeared on the screen. Sarah Cooper's eyes were red-rimmed, while Daniel's face showed the blank shock of overwhelming loss. "Ambassador," Daniel acknowledged flatly. "Dr. Cooper, Dr. Cooper," Ortega addressed them both formally. "I've just delivered our response to the council." "And?" Sarah asked, a desperate hope briefly animating her features. "They denied everything. Maintained it was an accident." Ortega chose honesty over comfort. "They will not acknowledge what they did to Ara." Daniel's hand found his wife's, squeezing tightly. "Then what happens now?" "In approximately 23 hours, Earth will execute Operation Righteous Response. I'm not at liberty to share specifics, but you should know that Ara's discovery was even more significant than she realized. The technology she identified—" "We don't care about the technology," interrupted Sarah, anger briefly overwhelming grief. "That's what they killed her for, isn't it? Some secret they wanted to keep?" "Yes," admitted Ortega. "But, in her notes, Ara didn't just identify the precursor gate signal. She figured out how to amplify it. She discovered that humans have a unique neurological ability to interface with the precursor technology." "What are you saying?" Daniel asked. "I'm saying your daughter may have discovered the most important technological breakthrough since faster-than-light travel. And I'm saying that in 23 hours, her discovery will help us ensure no other parents lose a child to council secrecy." Sarah's expression hardened. "Make them pay, Ambassador. Not just for Ara. Make them pay for every child they might have sacrificed before her, whose parents never knew the truth." "We will," promised Ortega. "The Council's 20,000 years of unquestioned authority ends tomorrow." After ending the transmission, she finally allowed herself to close her eyes. Just for a moment, she told herself. Just a brief rest before history changed irrevocably. "Admiral Vulov reports the fleet is in position," Reeves said quietly, allowing her this moment of weakness. "All systems are green." "And the quantum backdoors?" "Ready for simultaneous activation. Every piece of technology we've shared with the Council over the past 30 years is compromised. They'll lose communications, defenses, and gate control in the same instant." Ortega nodded without opening her eyes. "We gave them a chance, Thomas." "More than they gave Ara." "Is that how we'll justify it? By saying we're better than them because we issued an ultimatum before attacking?" Reeves considered the question seriously. "No. We'll justify it by building something better from the ashes. Something where no species can act with impunity against another. Something worthy of Ara Cooper's sacrifice." Finally, Ortega opened her eyes. "Then we'd better get it right the first time. Because after tomorrow, the galaxy will never trust humanity again." "After tomorrow," Reeves corrected. "The galaxy will never underestimate humanity again. There's a difference." As diplomatic and military personnel moved purposefully around the embassy, preparing for evacuation before the deadline expired, Ortega wondered if future historians would see that difference as clearly as General Reeves did, or if they would simply record that humanity, when provoked, proved more ruthless than the ancient council ever imagined possible. Either way, the die was cast. In 23 hours, the galaxy would change forever. The quantum communication node on Outpost Station K927 failed at precisely the same moment as every other node in Council space. 1 second. Administrator Peltz was reviewing agricultural production reports from the outer colonies. The next. His terminal displayed nothing but error messages. "Central, this is K927, he said into his comm unit. "We're experiencing a complete system failure." No response. "Central, please acknowledge." Silence. Peltz turned to his security chief, a Vrulheen named Mortok. "Run a diagnostic and try the emergency channels." Mortok's massive form moved to the communications array. "All frequencies are dead. Quantum entanglement links are—" "It's strange. They're still connected, but they're receiving garbage data. A technical malfunction. Across all systems simultaneously? Unlikely. Mordek's breathing apparatus hissed with concern. This has the characteristics of a coordinated attack. Attack? By whom? We're in the heart of Council space, hundreds of light years from any potential hostiles. Before Mordek could respond, the station's proximity alarms blared. On the main view screen, spatial distortions appeared, dozens of them, surrounding the station. "Unauthorized gate activations!" shouted the sensor operator. "Multiple vessels emerging!" Peltz stared in disbelief as ships materialized where no gates had been authorized. Sleek, angular vessels of unfamiliar design, moving with coordinated precision. "Defensive systems," he ordered, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Activate the shield grid." "No response," replied Mordek after frantically working the controls. "The defense grid is offline. Same as communications." A transmission cut through the chaos, broadcasting on a simple radio frequency so primitive that it bypassed the sophisticated jamming affecting their quantum systems. "Attention Council Outpost K-927. This is Captain Elena Zhao of the Earth Defense Force. Your station is surrounded. Your communications are disabled. Your defenses are neutralized. Surrender immediately." Earth? Humans. Peltz had barely registered the diplomatic incident mentioned in yesterday's briefing. Something about human demands following an accident at a research station. "Open a channel," he instructed Mordek. "Same frequency they're using?" "This is Administrator Peltz of Outpost K-927. What is the meaning of this aggression? The Council has no quarrel with Earth." "The Council murdered Ara Cooper," came the cold reply. "A 16-year-old girl. We have the evidence. You have 30 seconds to surrender before we open fire." Peltz looked at Mordek, who shook his massive head. "We have no defensive capabilities, no communications, no escape vessels with FTL capacity." "This is madness," Peltz muttered. "A diplomatic misunderstanding escalated to war." 20 seconds, warned Captain Zhao. "We surrender," Peltz transmitted, seeing no alternative. "Please. Our personnel are civilians, scientists and administrators. We have families aboard. Civilian personnel will be unharmed and evacuated to neutral territory," Zhao responded, her tone softening slightly. "Military and security forces will be detained. Prepare to be boarded." Similar scenes played out across Council space, from major military installations to remote outposts. Human forces appeared without warning, their attacks precisely coordinated. Council defenses, reliant on quantum technologies that humans had helped develop, proved useless against the backdoor exploits embedded years earlier. At the Central Observatory, home of the High Council and administrative heart of galactic governance, the attack was particularly swift and devastating. General Thomas Reeves personally led the assault, his flagship emerging from a precursor gate directly above the massive station. "This is General Thomas Reeves of the Earth Defense Force," he transmitted. "Your communications are disabled. Your defenses are offline. Your leadership is surrounded. In the name of Ara Cooper and humanity, we demand your immediate surrender." High Counselor Zivak, facing the first truly existential threat to the Council in his 3-century lifetime, attempted diplomacy. "General Reeves, surely we can discuss this situation reasonably. Whatever grievances Earth may have." "You killed a child to protect your monopoly," Reeves interrupted. "There is nothing to discuss." The human vessels opened fire, their weapons targeting specific sections of the observatory with surgical precision. The Council chamber, the security headquarters, the military command center, all destroyed in the opening salvo. Residential areas and scientific facilities remained untouched. Commander Vex died at his post, still sending desperate orders to a defense fleet that could neither receive his communications nor engage their weapon systems. Security Chief Draknar attempted to organize a physical resistance using small arms and personal shields. but was killed when an explosion collapsed the corridor outside the emergency bunker. High Counselor Zivak survived the initial bombardment, escorted to an evacuation pod by his personal guard. As the small vessel detached from the dying station, he had a moment to reflect on the miscalculation that had doomed 20,000 years of council rule. They had killed one human child, believing it a necessary sacrifice for stability. In response, humans had not just retaliated, they had systematically dismantled the entire power structure of the galaxy. The evacuation pod never reached its destination. A human interceptor tracked and disabled it, capturing rather than killing the High Counselor. Zivak would live to witness the formal surrender ceremony on Luna 3 days later. His once powerful form diminished by shock and the unfamiliar gravity of Earth's moon. Throughout Council space, the pattern repeated: precise military strikes, minimal civilian casualties, capture rather than execution of leadership. Within 12 hours, every major council installation was under human control. The most powerful political entity in known space had fallen to a species that, 30 years earlier, had barely mastered interplanetary travel. The secret of their success lay in Ara Cooper's discovery. The precursor gates, ancient technology that the Council had carefully controlled, responded to unique quantum frequencies that human neurological patterns could naturally generate. The Council had hidden this compatibility, fearing what would happen if humans realized their potential. Ara had not just detected the signal, she had recognized it as something her own brain could amplify. In her notes, found in a secure backup she had hidden in her parents' research data, she described it as like hearing a song I've always known, but never heard before. Earth scientists had been studying the phenomenon in secret for years, making limited progress. Ara's intuitive breakthrough accelerated their research by decades. Using her findings, they activated thousands of dormant gates simultaneously, bypassing the Council's carefully constructed transportation monopoly. The human fleet, hidden in unpopulated systems beyond Council monitoring, deployed through these newly activated gates in a single coordinated strike. The quantum backdoors in Council technology did the rest, neutralizing defenses that had protected galactic civilization for millennia. By the time Vox Thule regained consciousness in the ruins of the Council chamber, the war was effectively over. 20,000 years of carefully accumulated power had been broken in minutes. The archivist's first thought was for the records, the historical documents and data crystals that preserved the Council's long history. Staggering through debris-filled corridors, ignoring his injuries, he made his way to the Great Archive. The chamber was largely intact, protected by independent shield generators and structural reinforcements designed to preserve knowledge through any catastrophe. Human soldiers stood guard at the entrance, but allowed him to pass when he identified himself as the chief archivist. "General Reeves left specific instructions regarding the archives," explained the soldier. "They're to be preserved intact. No destruction, no tampering." Vox moved through the familiar space, assessing damage and securing critical data crystals. As he worked, he realized that the humans had placed guards not to prevent access, but to prevent destruction, to ensure that the Council's records survived its fall. They wanted the history preserved, all of it, including their own actions. That, more than anything, told Vox Thule that this was not merely a military coup or change of leadership. It was a fundamental transformation of how power would function in the galaxy. 3 days later, the unconditional surrender was signed on Luna. Admiral Petra Vulov, a tall human female with steel-gray hair and implacable eyes, represented Earth. The surviving Council representatives, less than 30 of the original 300, stood opposite her, Zivak at their center. "The Galactic Council is hereby dissolved," Vulov stated, her voice neither triumphant nor vengeful, simply matter-of-fact. "In its place, we establish the Federation of Independent Systems, where all species shall have equal voice and equal access to technology. Zivak, once the most powerful individual in the galaxy, signed the document with a tentacle that trembled slightly. What assurance do we have that this Federation will not simply replace Council tyranny with human domination? None, replied Vulov candidly. Except our actions. Judge us by what we do, not what we promise. Within days, the precursor gate network was fully activated. Thousands of dormant gates, some dating back to species long extinct, suddenly operational after eons of silence. Transportation routes that the Council had carefully controlled for millennia were now open to all. The consequences were immediate and profound. Species that had been marginalized by distance from official gates suddenly found themselves connected to galactic civilization. Economies long stagnant under Council trade regulations experienced explosive growth. Cultural exchange accelerated as barriers to travel disappeared. Chaos. Yes, but creative chaos. Dynamic chaos. The carefully ordered stability of Council rule gave way to a messy, unpredictable, vibrant interstellar community. Not everyone welcomed the change. Former Council powers lost significant advantages. Rebellions flared on worlds where Council-supported regimes had maintained control through restricted access to technology. Criminal organizations exploited the sudden regulatory vacuum. The newly formed Federation addressed these challenges not through centralized authority, but through coalition building. Earth took a prominent, but not dominant role, working alongside former Council species and previously marginalized civilizations. Vox Thule observed it all, continuing his work as archivist now for the Federation rather than the Council. Ambassador Ortega had personally requested his service, recognizing the value of institutional memory even, perhaps especially, when institutions themselves changed. "We need you to continue your work," she had told him. "The Federation requires an honest accounting of history, including our own actions." He had accepted, partly from duty, partly from curiosity about what would replace the system he had served for centuries, but mostly from a sense of atonement. He had remained silent when the Council ordered Era Cooper's death. Perhaps, by recording the truth of what followed, he could partially redeem that silence. The truth was complex. Earth's overwhelming victory had not erased the moral ambiguity of their methods. They had embedded backdoors in shared technology, a profound breach of trust. They had built a secret military fleet while presenting themselves as peaceful newcomers. They had planned and executed a devastating first strike that gave their opponents no real chance to surrender before destruction. Yet against these tactics stood the Council's own actions: the deliberate murder of a child, the millennia of technological suppression, the autocratic control that stifled innovation and independence across thousands of worlds. Vox documented it all without judgment, allowing future generations to draw their own conclusions. His new quarters on Earth, provided by the Federation government, overlooked a great ocean, so different from the artificial environments of Council stations where he had spent most of his life. Occasionally, he received visitors, former Council officials seeking to justify their actions in the historical record, Federation representatives requesting information about past governance structures, academics researching the transition period. Most meaningful was his visit from Daniel and Sarah Cooper, 6 months after the Council's fall. They had returned to their research, now with unprecedented access to formerly restricted systems through the Open Gate network. "We wanted to thank you," Sarah said, her grief still evident, but tempered now by purpose. "For preserving the record of what happened to Aura, for not allowing it to be erased." "I did nothing to prevent it," Vox admitted. "I stood by while protocol silence was authorized." "But you documented it accurately," Daniel countered. "Without your records, the footage might have been dismissed as fabrication. Your testimony gave it context, confirmation. Small comfort for parents who lost a child." Sarah's expression hardened. "Nothing can comfort that loss. But knowing her death meant something, that it led to the liberation of thousands of species from council control, that gives her life meaning retroactively. The Era Cooper Foundation is opening educational centers near every major gate hub. Daniel explained, places where young people of all species can learn without the restrictions the council imposed. Places where curiosity is celebrated, not punished. Vox considered this a fitting memorial. More than a memorial, Sarah insisted. A continuation. Ara discovered something that changed the galaxy. These centers will help others do the same. After they departed, Vox added their visit to his ongoing chronicle. The personal element, he had discovered, was often more revealing than grand political statements or military actions. The Coopers' transformation of grief into purpose reflected humanity's broader response to the Council's transgression. The phrase, "Don't kill children," had become something of a galactic maxim, a simplistic but powerful distillation of the event that transformed interstellar civilization. It appeared in diplomatic protocols, in military doctrines, in educational materials across 1,000 worlds. Not just human children, any children of any species. Perhaps, Vox reflected, that was the true measure of progress. Not technological advancement or political sophistication, but the expanding circle of moral concern. The recognition that some actions were unacceptable regardless of strategic justification. The Council had ruled for 20,000 years, maintaining a particular kind of stability through careful control. The Federation offered something messier, but potentially more vibrant. A civilization where power was more distributed, where access to knowledge and technology was considered a right rather than a privilege. Whether it would last remained to be seen. History suggested that all political systems eventually calcified, that revolutionary ideals gave way to practical compromises, that liberators sometimes became oppressors. But that was a story for future archivists to document. Vox Thule would record what he witnessed, the fall of one civilization and the birth of another, triggered by the death of a curious 16-year-old girl who heard a quantum song no one else recognized. I am Vox Thule, archivist of the Federation of Independent Systems, formerly of the Galactic Council. I record these words as testament. Judge me as you will.